All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TRINKtalks, the pod extension of Trink Magazine, where we explore the complex world of German speaking wines through direct and in depth conversation.
We're honored to be joined by Kai Schätzel and Jule Eichblatt, two visionary and provocative figures leading the way for German wines. They're here to help us understand how rethinking farming and cellar work can transform what German wine can, maybe even should be. And just a few words about both of them before we let them take the mics. Kai Schätzel is the owner and mind behind the very well respected 600-year-old estate, Weingut Scha in Rheinhessen, as I said. And he farms some of the most prized sites in the iconic Roter Hang, Wetzlar, with a cellar stocked with 6 centuries of culture of all sorts, a library of molds, yeast, casks, practices, and maybe most importantly, ideas. And yet, few other estates are as radical. Those that do come to mind are much further down the spectrum of startups or side projects. Jule Eichblatt has a background outside of wine, but has been crucial to injecting a fresh perspective and energy to the estate. Since she joined Kai in 2022, they have reimagined their work through a perspective they call Kommune 3000, Commune 3000, which Jule will, I hope, explain to us shortly. What interests me most about their work is their belief that, as Kai has said, good farming can save the world, and how they're putting that belief into action and the mind-bending wines they call modern wines, that are the result.
Yes, I would love to have you start off. Valerie and I are both quite familiar with you guys and have been for a while, but for our audience members who maybe are not as familiar, could you each quickly share your path into wine? First Kai and then Yuna?
Okay,
Quickly, Kai.
quickly. Yes, I'm born and raised at the winery Schätzl. So when I was a kid, the family was in the wine business already. My mother was mostly in charge of it, and I had 2 younger brothers, and all of us we did join the daily work. And so honestly, when I was young, I was not in love with grape picking. It was cold in these days and wet. So I made it to start my career to the cellar, and I helped the people in the cellar. And a couple of years later, I made it to handle the press instead of picking grapes. And this was my first step to take over responsibility when I was quite young. So I think I started pressing wines with 13, 14 years. And this was the beginning, because perhaps I was too lazy to pick grapes.
Okay, my side. I have a much more younger history in wine. I originally come from the north of Germany. I started my own startup when I was 25. It was a delivery service for local foods from the farmers to the people's home. And suddenly we had the idea not to only bring potatoes and carrots to the people, but also bring some wines for that dinner. And we had a good friend from Hamburg, and she curated our wine portfolio at that time. And I got to learn a little bit about it. But in 2020, it was at a certain time in COVID time where I needed to have a little break. And I asked a friend to recommend me where to go for some harvest experience. And this is how I met Kai and did my first intermezzo with a harvest team in Nierstein. And yeah, this is how the story began.
In between, I grew up, so I'm not 40 years anymore. But we met when I took over the family winery and turned it to a already organic place. In 2008, I directly came from university, studied economics before in Hamburg, and I had the dream to become a relevant winemaker. I had no idea from my perspective of today, perhaps. I did not study wine. I did study just economics, but I had my experience on doing wines with a family business. So I was doing a lot of harvests before. I was working with US wineries for harvest, and I knew something about pressing grapes and tasting wine, but the full experience was quite kiddie. And perhaps this was a good moment to restart a lot of things at the same time without thinking too much about it. And I think we can talk about this for the rest of the podcast. But
How do you define good farming when it comes to viticulture? And how can good grape farming change the world concretely, in your opinion?
That's a big question. So, um, you have to know, I'm also from a farm myself. My father was a crop farmer, so totally different world. So I grew up with crop and wheat and everything what, we are daily having on our plate. So when I joined Kai at the winery and the harvest crew in 2020, for me, it was like a little playground to meet because, in hectare wise and, all the dimensions, the crop farm in Northern Germany is so different to what is done here. I wouldn't call it a shock, but it was just a different world. And if you would have asked me at that time, I would have said, no way, with a winery, you cannot change anything because it's so little. And, it's just a very irrelevant scene, but it's not. I learned a lot. So maybe we don't need the alcohol to be healthy, not at all, but we can use it as a communicating instrument. And what we like about the wine and what's the function of the wine from our perspective today is that it can transport lots of stories about good farming. And the people are willing to put the bottle of the wine on the table and talk about it. And they are really interested in it. They are willing to pay a certain price for it, sometimes even immense prices. So there is a big thing and a big it's really it's something what we can use, knowing that we need to change a lot, everywhere in farming, not only in viticulture. And this is what I like to focus on, to talk about farming in a holistical perspective, and not to focus too much on only the viticulture. Maybe Kai can do that. And this is also why I said, okay, when I'm joining the winery, we need to have animals in the vineyards. We need to grow trees in the vineyards because we need to build a system. We want to break monoculture and we want to create a system where also other farms can learn from. And when we do that, we can inspire other farmers, we can inspire consumers, we can inspire a lot of people that farming can indeed do something very good.
This kind of ambassador profile of wine is quite important if it comes to the point that I think we know one of the biggest challenges in our time is what we name the climate change. The climate change is partly based on the CO2 problem. If we make it very short, the thing is we pumped a lot of CO2 from the terroir to the atmosphere. And at the moment, the best way to bring it back to the ground are plants. And planting plants by humans, we name agriculture. So that's the point I think we need to make clear, that farming is not only to create food or alcohol, it's also about the atmosphere in general. So as long as we cannot pump it to Mars or whatever, we need to grow smart and wisely. And this is what we name modern farming. It has nothing to do with a romantic Middle Ages farming. It's perhaps the smartest and best way to heal the world again.
It's a really good way to look at it. But that's also a really big thing, right? It's, it's these philosophical ideas. So beyond the vision of good farming saving the world, I'm a storyteller, and so I like to focus on individual moments. Could you guys share a specific moment or observation of either conventional viticulture or winemaking where that really for you was the point at which you said there has to be a different way? Was there something you saw, something you experienced where you said, this, I can't go any further this way?
Yeah, so there are so many of these indicator moments, and I really need to pick one out. Perhaps let's jump to the year 2018. It was again a hot and a dry summer. Yes, we are honored here in Nierstein to work on what we name classified Grand Cru vineyards. These vineyards have a big history in the cool climate decade, but they are the indicators for the heat waves as well. So in 2018, it happened in the steep parts of the Pettental south-facing vineyards that it was so dry that it was not just a classical farmers complaining anymore. It was the moment where we started to pick grapes in August 20. It was a moment where we really see that wines did die, and we saw that this kind of farming comes to an end. First in the steeper south-facing vineyards, but what is happening to these vineyards today will happen to the rest of the economy another day. So we are sometimes perhaps the pioneer group that needs to move first. We did a couple of 100 years ago when it was too cold in general to plant wine, but the Romans found some warmer spots. And today it's the warmer spots again that can be indicators to learn about the next levels and perhaps to create a farming that can survive here without moving to the north and without a topic that we will talk perhaps about later on as well, irrigation.
Thank you.
Along those lines, energy feels like a very big topic at your estate. The personal energy of idea and effort, systemic energy, the charge from the sun, soil, and ecosystem, and cellar energy, the forces that are at work in your cask in the tank, and I would say the energy in the wines themselves, which I found undeniable. Could you elaborate a little bit on all these forms of energy and how you see them interacting with each other? And maybe a concrete example of how you actively try to cultivate these to work synergistically.
If you look at us, we are not the people that want to conserve energy and say, that's it. Julie and I, we work on the process of the transformation of energy, bringing one energy to another. And if we
find a balance.
and find a balance.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes it needs a lot of time. And if we look to wine and to nature, this transformation of energy is called fermentation. And so this process is what we feel in society and we feel in nature, in the vineyards, and especially in the product. So in wine, everybody smiles if we say fermentation and thinks, yes, I know about fermentation. But for us, it's not just the alcoholic fermentation. If we go deeper to our winemaking is based on the idea of balance and harmony that comes from several fermentations. So we run minimum 3 fermentations, so 3 big processes to balance out what is unstable at the beginning. But nature is brilliant in creating stable moments. And the result is what we name naturally stable wines. The wines that are resting on an energy level for quite a long time. And we are honored that you name this an energetic moment in wine. It's just a balance in energy for quite a time. And we trust in this balance a lot. So we continue to listen and learn to this moments in nature to balance it out.
I love that. And I just want to jump in here quickly to say, when you explain it that way, it sounds so self-evident. I wonder why more people aren't farming and making wine with that approach.
Time.
I think there's a lot we can compare to our personal development and also how we balance out the energy we have as human beings. And this is why maybe Kai looked at me saying time, because it's something what also we discovered a lot in a relationship and also in being like partners in a winery. There is a lot of energy, but it's not always there. And we have to, find a good balance also to enable energy again and see how we can trust. Yeah.
That's the point. Trust in natural processes, trust in fermentations, and listen to the result and don't interact too much. So if you stop nature, nature is not your friend anymore. If you kill bacteria and yeasts, they cannot help you anymore. But if you wait and be in a partnership, in a Kommune, this kind of elements, things are coming to a balance. And this is not esoterical blah blah. So the result, if you like it or not, are wines that can age for a very long time and that are stable against most of the classical problems of wine aging. So they will not oxidize anymore. They don't get VA. They don't get the mouse. They will stay drinkable for those that love it, and they look like normal wine. So we don't talk here about very wild, extreme wines made only for 3 tattooed sommeliers anywhere in a dark nightclub. We believe that most of the wines that can be made in this way are drinkable, and they can create pleasure and fun and harmony.
I love this idea of energy. Also, the way that energy flows. Energy isn't static. The same way that you were talking about how nature isn't static, and you need to keep this constant transformation and movement, as people, as plants, as all of it. But there's another name that you were talking about earlier. When you were referring to your wines, you called them modern. Um, that's a deceptively simple way of phrasing it, and also very wide reaching. Can you explain a little bit about why you chose that word and why you think that that's a good definition for your wines today?
We know that it can be slightly confusing to name an artistic handwork program in the vineyards, biodynamic working, modern. And our answer is modern for us is what we name state of the art. So use all the knowledge we created during hundreds or thousands of years of farming and combine it with the most modern techniques to create a no or minimal intervention farming idea. So modern is a combination of the future and knowledge, and it combines the VDP artwork of craftsmanship, the knowledge about terroir, with flying drones, with laboratory knowledge, with starting new experiments like trees in the vineyards, vitiforest projects, one day perhaps solar panels. So we are totally open to the future, and at the same time we use all the power of history.
Looking to the future, Kommune 3000, Jule, tell us what that's all about and how that concept fits together with the historic winery.
Well, we have to maybe split the wording into, words. The Kommune and its 3000. And what Kai just discussed and explained is more or less like the functional, the perspective we have. It's called 3000. It's using all the knowledge we have, but also having a perspective from like a very, very point in the future, looking at today and ask ourselves, how would we decide with a perspective future knowledge from 3000, and then decide hopefully something what is more sustainable and more it makes more sense in the future. This is what we mean by 3000. So it's more or less a perspective we have. And then the Kommune, it's something what is like, sometimes in Germany people think it's like a political thing to do, but it's not. So when we go to Norway, every village is called a Kommune. So it's a community. It's a group of people being at a boat and working on something. And it's much more means what we mean by flat hierarchies and a society or a community here at the winery, but also worldwide, which has a certain common interest and working together in a very modern way again, with very flat hierarchies, but with lots of responsibility, where even young people take over responsibility for something and are being kept responsible for that, what they host. And this is also how we educate our trainees here. And this is also why we call ourselves a Kommune, with all the people joining, but also a Ukrainian family is living with us in a house. So we open our door, and our doors, open for people to join.
Our doors and gardens. So we share a lot. So the vineyards and the garden, we grow, create, and we share knowledge and our time we invest in the future. And whoever was here realizes that there's a lot of energy in this people's world, and people are perhaps the terroir of what we name the future. So working together is so powerful.
It's work too,
but it's fun as well.
Fun.
And sort of building on that, can you think of a specific instance or a favorite moment where your approach led to a decision or even an outcome that likely wouldn't have happened under a more traditional top-down structure? Is there something where you can point to and say that without this approach, that couldn't have happened?
We have to think about it.
I have one
Yeah.
thing that is not a small thing, but it feels so normal that today we talk about natural stable wines, but we never had a marketing plan to make natural wine one day. Of course, we had a lot of signals from nature telling us, but it was also the people working on together with us, bringing more and more natural stable wines and saying, okay, what's happening in your cellar is okay. And I said, okay, is it really okay? And so it was the team as well pushing us. I remember it was a Brandon this day, Max, he brought a lot of natural wines. We tasted together and no hierarchies, and sharing what we do brought us to more knowledge and to a next level of self-confidence to say, okay, perhaps one day we will be more and more like this. This is quite a long time ago for us today, and it feels super normal, but it came from the group of people.
But it's always a process. So it's never like a certain point of time where you have to take one decision and then you think, oh, but we have to take it in a 3000 or a Kommune 3000 way. It's more a process, as Kai just discussed it. And it's the same with, keeping sheep in the vineyards. If it was only Kai and myself, it would be, I don't know if we would have them, because we have them because the Kommune is taking over responsibility. And we trust on our trainees that when we are like 3 weeks in the US, they have the responsibility and they do it. And maybe it's a lot of that, but more in a longer perspective.
Fantastic.
First, we need to explain that today all of our wines are infected by 3000. That means last year in November, we launched the information that we will not produce wines for historical reasons anymore, but for what we think is our future. So the modern wine release we did last year in November in Copenhagen was the moment where we said, okay, all of our dry wines don't get more stabilization than necessary. At the moment, we don't sulfur the wines anymore before bottling. We don't filter them. For the dry wines, we still have cabinets and they have a yellow label. We talk about cabinets later. But to pick out one wine from this portfolio, perhaps we can say it's a Riesling named Riesling 3000. It stands for this kind of aspects of investment in planting trees and working with animals and education of people.
It's also a Fuchs. I think we should talk about it too, because it came to life in 2018 and it was like the natural GG next to the hipping GG, but it couldn't be called GG. It was clear that it has to have a certain different name, but the old vineyard name of hipping is Fuchsloch. Kai said, okay, so when I have a natural version of this hipping GG, I would call it Fuchs. And it has 1 year of aging in the barrel, longer than the hipping GG. So it was always like a certain time difference in releasing the wines. But now in 2021, for the 2021 vintage more, we decided to bring all the wine we have from the hipping from the cellar, we bottled them as a Fuchs. So we decided to not differentiate anymore, but to rather, bring it to one product, which is called Fuchs. It's really it's sometimes different for us, difficult for us to say we are proud, but we are proud because after 4 years now, the Fuchs is such a successful wine, which is proving that a natural wine can be like a natural GG, and it's
there's a lot of potential in this wines to heal again this kind of two worlds and bring it together, because the handwork we do in the vineyard and the terroir is one of the best terroirs. It's a hipping, it's a steep red slatey vineyards, and a lot of iconic friends are working next to us there. And the biggest difference here is that finally at the end we use a different stabilization technique. But if we talk about farming and grapes and precise work in the vineyard and in the cellar, it is the same idea than it was with the große Gewächsweins from the past. So we honor terroir a lot, and so this wine is a kind of in between the worlds. And we love this a lot, and we are extremely proud that this wine is now at so many nice restaurants in the wine menus, and people use it as an ambassador for a new wave of natural stable fine wines.
Well, that leads perfectly into my next question, which is that you guys have talked a bit about your own process of getting to where you are now. What led you to it, where you think it's going in the future. How has it been received so far? When you started coming out on the lower intervention spectrum and really making a name as doing something different than you had been doing before. How has it been received? I mean, you talked a little bit about folks, but in general, was was it a difficult transition?
Every transition needs an energy level that you can translate or transform. And of course, at the beginning, it was not only easy, but we were so inspired by nature because nature took us on the hand. The, the wines in the cellar explained us that they don't need more stabilization. They were clean and clear and they didn't oxidize. So we protected what we had in the cellar and brought it to the people. And honestly, we are not alone. There are a lot of highly ambitious and very talented young female and male winemakers out there, not only in Rheinhessen, but in Germany, in Austria, in France, in Spain, in Italy, that we know they work on the same program. And there are a lot of places around the world. They are named natural wine bars. Sometimes it's star restaurants. Sometimes it's in Scandinavia, but it's happening around the corner as well. That more and more people are listening to the craftsmanship of farming. And this is what we try to deliver. So yes, it is work to convince people or bring something new, but it's entertaining as well for us and for the people that get something new.
But
Yep.
you talk about the people for whom it's something new. So, of course, there is a group of people who expected maybe something different or for whom this is a change. But there is also a group of people who are not affected at all because they are so young and they are still in the age of getting to know us. Of course, there are lots of people in the world not knowing about Schätze so far, and they are just open. And this is just so beautiful to see how easy it can be to talk to a young generation of wine interested people who are just curious and they want to learn so much, and they don't really come with a with a expectation and then say it's different to what I expected. They are just open, and this is just fun. So we have a lot of fun with this young generation, but also, and this is maybe something also what you have asked, we are very, very happy about how the reaction was so far because we see that people are really interested. There is a lot, but we need to concentrate. So our trainees, they have an open garden every Thursday. So everyone can just walk in and try wines, and they will open some bottles, maybe not only Schätze bottles. So it's their own format. This is something where kind of I have nothing to say. And then once a month, we are doing a hike to the vineyards, showing to everyone who's interested our Viti Forest project, so all the trees we just planted. And sometimes we are lucky that the sheep are also in this area so that we can have a look at them. And of course, there's also a tasting. And now there is something coming up what we really love and which is also something what is, what we haven't planned. But 3 years ago, we had our first edition of the Festival 3000. It was more or less a party of friends in the vineyard. And now we have the third edition, and it's something where people from nearly all over the world are traveling to Nierstein, having that tent with them, sleeping and camping in the vineyard, and then celebrating from sunrise to sunset with us in the vineyard. And it's a Kommune festival, so everyone brings something. It's really a community thing. So somebody can bring just a cake you've baked at home. Some others, they are doing improv theater courses. Of course, there are some DJs coming, a yoga class teacher. So everyone is bringing something, and this is how this is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yes.
Very nice. Yeah. So talking about Pettental, when I tasted I think it was the 2020 vintage, I have to admit, it blew me away. It is one of those wine moments where I felt like I was pretty familiar with your collection. It was moving in a slightly different direction than what I had tasted before, but I was following along, really happy with it. And then that wine came in the glass, and I just sort of did a complete double take, enough that when I was tasting it blind, I had to pull the the sock off so that I could see, because I felt like I had poured an entirely different wine from somewhere else entirely. Um, and the tasting note, I just ended up going all over the place. It had very little to do with the classic flavor notes, aromas, whatnot. And it was very much a wine of feeling, of experience that I felt like I needed to capture on the tasting note. And I actually wrote at one point, this is the taste of ceding control, um, which goes along with the philosophy that you guys have been talking about energy, about this flow of energy, about learning and exchange. Does the idea of ceding control resonate with you guys? Letting go of shepherding something. When you cede control, something else is in control, or you say, we're going to move forward. You're no longer steering the ship.
I think we can just continue on what we have been talking before. So letting nature become less monocultural, believing in a system that can heal itself, partly, of course, not totally. Sometimes we need to help a bit. And if it comes to winemaking, this kind of 3 or multiple fermentations, we believe, are a magical game changer in stabilization. And if we come back to the Pettental 20 you have been talking about and that you have been tasting before, this wine is a magical moment in our wine history, because this wine was aged for a couple of years. First, it did the alcoholic fermentation, it went through the malolactic fermentation, and then this kind of magical white thing at the top did start to grow. So it is transformed by floor yeasts. And floor yeasts are not only laissez-faire. So that's why if you talk about ceding control or let it go, whatever, we look at each other and think, yes, it's both. It's follow the transformation of nature, but at the same time be very close and look at it, listen to the moments and track it. So it's a very precise work behind, but we don't interact. If everything went nice, we just track it. So for example, we follow the floor very intensely. We take pictures of the surface of the barrels once a week. Then we combine the pictures over the weeks and see, okay, the floor is growing here. We can make the surface bigger, so we let 1 or 2 liters out of the barrel. Or if it's getting weaker, we can top the barrels up and say, okay, the time of floor is over. So we use natural processes to stabilize, but it's not just let it go and at the end find a name to describe whatever happened. So it's a very precise work, and we are a very motivated crew of people that follow all the micro details. And some call me a geek or an idiot because I'm so in love with micro details.
That's true, but I think our function has changed, kind of. We are not the ones manipulating or deciding over the wine how it should be, but rather observing it and then supporting it. And I think also you just said we are not interacting. Yes, we are interacting, but in a cooperative way. So we listen and then support. Yeah, we are very happy that the Pettental 2020 got so relaxed and is so balanced out.
And all of that at only 11.5% alcohol, which was also fantastic because there was so much power, structure, and depth without the overwhelming alcohol that too often goes along with it.
Low alcohol is a logical consequence of our picking strategy. So as we want the grapes to be natural and stable, we need healthy grapes with a quite low pH level that are physically ripe. And this is a very important information. It's not only about picking grapes earlier and picking unripe grapes. We really do a kind of grape or berry selection for what we name golden cut, berries that just turn tasty, but they are at the lowest sugar level possible, and they have a stable pH level, so the wines can go through the alcoholic fermentation and the malolactic fermentation without the risk of being open to VA problems or bacteria. So they are stabilized by naturally health until the floor yeast can start and take over the next stabilization thing. And so the alcohol levels are normally under 11.5.
There's only one problem. Sometimes it takes 8 years.
Makes the wines tasty. Yeah, so Yeah, if you want to interact with the wines too early and try to make dry wines from these grapes and release them after 3 months of aging only, this is not really an elegant tasting moment. So they need a lot of time and they need the autolyse moments, so to age on the full yeast, like the champagne told
Hmm.
us since a long time already that sour wine can become nice and drinkable champagne one day. We just need the time of fermentation, natural processes to find harmony.
Balance.
Yeah, we start picking early, but we pick for a very long time. So we run week by week through all of our vineyards mostly and just pick out what gets ripe. And if we finished, we start in the Ölberg areas and go to Pettental, Rothenberg. And if we are finished there, we restart again. So it's a circle. Of course, we know that we produce alcohol, and we are not afraid about this discussion. We are okay in reflecting what is the thing about and the responsibility about being a producer. We are open to talk about it and say, okay, yes, there are aspects that will change in society um, uh, in our time. And at the same time, we come back to what Julie pointed out earlier and say wine can transport so much positive energy, positive content to the people that perhaps it's not a daily drink only, but it can be a special moment to talk about farming and lifestyle and whatever. And we like this. I think what we deliver today is exactly fitting into this atmosphere. And yes, if we do a calculation on the consumption of alcohol, the result is not a secret anymore. There will be less alcohol to drink in modern societies. And we feel that's okay. Um, uh, that's our opinion about it. And we invest in farming, and perhaps one day we learn so much about our fermentation stuff and whatever that perhaps one day there will be hardly any alcohol in the product. But that's not the point only. We create an atmosphere together with people to make something that can give an impact, even though we know there is some alcohol in it.
Mm. And with every crisis, there is a big chance. And I think that, or we think that in viticulture, there's the chance that something very innovative comes up over the next years to come, and that we are maybe quicker than other farming areas are. Or it's not a competition, but we can show what I meant when I said that we can also inspire other farming producers, that we can show that it's possible, even though there is maybe a much more tiny farm, but we can show that product becomes so relevant and so well paid that it can change something, and that people can live from it.
It just that's for us too. We don't believe that tradition is an excuse to do something wrong. If it's against society and if it's against something, we need to reflect traditions and don't conserve what perhaps is in the process. That's our opinion about it, because we believe that tradition was made one day from innovation. So, and if we want to keep the fire burning, we need to innovate the next level, and we can integrate the knowledge from the last level and bring it to a next level. It's not over yet, but we don't want to fight against the cultural change.
Yeah.
That's a technological change as well, and so we are open to that, and we are thrilled to be part of the future.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to share with our listeners? We've talked about a lot of things, but is there something that's burning on either of your minds?
We talked about new processes of winemaking that are possible for us, and we think this is not against anybody else. We are still learning. We listen to nature. We experiment something and do something new. Something feels very old. Something feels new again. And we are not alone. And there are a lot of wonderful farmers and chefs and journalists in our micro bubble that are inspired as well. And that's the same with the VDP. So we love this club of high potential winemakers, and we believe that new talents will come, and new talents go new paths, and they learned their wine knowledge at other wineries. So it is a circle of exchange, and bring it together to make a big change happen.
Fantastic. And just one last question. Any chance that you can share a little bit about how our listeners can best connect with you, learn more, find your wines? I know it's tough when people are listening from around the world. That's a little more difficult, but what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I would say it's Instagram. So our Instagram page Schätzel or Weingut Schätzel is also, we are communicating English. So that's quite easy to connect with us. And of course, send us a DM if there are any questions. And also we have our own web shop. So people can buy our, well, maybe not from the US, but from like Europe. It's very easy to buy our wines here directly. And on our website, we also listed all our partners worldwide. So
And we have
maybe,
wonderful partners
yeah,
helping us to distribute information, content, and wines as well.
but we are always looking for new partners too. So we are very happy to connect with people who want to join the Kommune for a harvest team or to work with us in a certain country. So we are happy to connect.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think I can say that I feel like every encounter I have with you is a charge of energy and optimism, and I hope that our readers and listeners feel that too. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paula and Valerie.
Thank
You
you.
too.